The future of nuclear power, China is planning to build the world's first commercial thorium molten salt reactor. A revolution in nuclear energy, or just hot air? Be sure to stay tuned until the end to find out all about it. Welcome, friends. Nuclear energy, a demonized technology for some, the salvation of the climate for others. If you want to learn more about such energy topics, then why not subscribe to the channel? It's absolutely free, you'll never miss a video again, and you'll be helping me immensely. Let's start with a poll. Was Germany's nuclear phase-out the right thing to do, or was it a stupid and anti-scientific decision made solely to win votes after Fukushima? Please feel free to write your opinion in the comments. Now imagine there was a nuclear reactor that was not fueled by uranium, but by another radioactive element, a reactor that doesn't need cooling water and where a meltdown is physically impossible. A reactor that produces hardly any long-lived radioactive waste and whose fuel is not suitable for nuclear weapons. Sounds too good to be true? That's exactly what thorium liquid salt reactor technology promises. And while others are still discussing the pros and cons of nuclear energy, China is simply getting on with it. The world's first commercial thorium molten salt reactor is set to go into operation in the Gobi Desert by 2025. Wait a minute, nuclear power in the desert? Don't you need a lot of water for cooling? This is precisely one of the advantages of this new reactor technology. But first, let's answer the question of what thorium actually is. Some of you probably only know it from World of Warcraft, but in the real world, thorium is a radioactive chemical element that is ranked 90th in the periodic table, just 2 places to the left of uranium, which we are familiar with. Incidentally, it was actually named after the Norse god of thunder, Thor. Maybe we should call the next Marvel movie Thor and the Asgard Nuclear Power Plant. Thorium occurs in nature about 3 times as often as uranium. It is estimated that China has such large thorium deposits that they could meet their entire energy needs for the next 20,000 years. For comparison, 20,000 years ago, the last ice age ended and modern humans began to spread throughout Europe. In 20,000 years, humanity will probably already be using fusion reactors to jet across the galaxy, or living in caves again, depending on how we do. But why is thorium so interesting for nuclear energy? The main reason is that, unlike uranium, thorium is not a fissile material.
But wait a minute. How is a nuclear reactor supposed to work with it then, Astro Tim?
Good question. Thorium is not fissile, but it is fertile. This means that it can be converted into fissile uranium-233 by neutron bombardment. Think of it as a kind of nuclear dating service. Thorium-232 is the shy bachelor who only becomes the radiant uranium-233 through the matchmaking skills of a neutron. This uranium is then the real star of the show and drives the chain reaction. The advantage of this process is that it produces less long-lived radioactive waste than the fission of uranium-235 in conventional reactors. Furthermore, uranium-233 is much harder to use to build nuclear weapons than the plutonium produced in classic reactors. It's like having only a plastic spoon instead of a sharp kitchen knife. Theoretically, you could still cut your steak with it, but it would be quite laborious. Let's move on to the second part of the magic reactor, liquid salt. In a thorium liquid salt reactor, the fuel, i.e. the thorium, and the uranium it produces is dissolved in molten salt. This hot salt mixture simultaneously serves as a coolant and transports the heat produced by the nuclear fission, and that has several advantages. Firstly, the reactor does not have to be operated under high pressure, as is the case with classic light water reactors. This reduces the risk of leaks and explosions. Secondly, the salt mixture has a very high boiling point of over 1,000 degrees, which means it cannot evaporate and cause a steam explosion, as was the case in the Fukushima accident. Thirdly, and this is really the cleverest part, the salt mixture acts as a built-in safety mechanism in the event of a malfunction. If it gets too hot, it expands and the chain reaction automatically comes to a halt. In an emergency, the hot salt mixture can simply be drained into a collecting container, where it solidifies and the reaction stops. It's like having another emergency stop button built right into the reactor core. Speaking of emergency stop buttons, imagine you're sitting comfortably on the couch watching an exciting episode of your favorite show. That's Star Trek for you. Suddenly the power goes out. Annoying, but no big deal. With a conventional nuclear power plant, such a power outage is a little more annoying. The cooling system must continue to operate even when the power fails, otherwise there is a risk of a meltdown. During the accident in Fukushima, the emergency power generators failed due to the tsunami, and we all know the rest. A large area received a good dose of radiation. Contrary to German media reports, however, there were no masses of dead. To date, there has been only one Fukushima death, just one. A thorium molten salt reactor, on the other hand, is super relaxed about a power outage. If the power goes out, a plug at the bottom of the reactor simply melts and the hot salt mixture flows into a collecting container where it cools and solidifies. The reaction stops by itself without any active safety systems having to intervene. It's a bit like your beer automatically turning into a soft drink when the power goes out, sure, but maybe a little less exciting. Beer. But if this technology is so great, why don't we already have thorium reactors on every street corner? The idea is not new. As early as the 1960s, an experimental thorium liquid salt reactor was operated at Oak Ridge National Laboratory in the United States. However, the project was then discontinued because the focus was on the development of uranium reactors. One reason for this was that these also supplied plutonium for nuclear weapons, and at the time of the Cold War, this was an important argument. Today, however, thorium technology is experiencing a renaissance, and China is determined to be at the forefront of this development. The planned reactor in the Gobi Desert is initially expected to produce 2 megawatts of thermal power. That's about as much as 2,000 toasters would consume. It doesn't sound like much, just enough to power some of us for breakfast, but it's a decent amount for the first commercial prototype. China's long-term goal is to build small modular thorium reactors with an electrical output of 100 megawatts or more by 2030. These could then be exported to other countries as part of the New Silk Road, China's gigantic trade and infrastructure project. Imagine, instead of silk and spices, the New Silk Road transports mini nuclear power plants across Asia and Africa. Marco Polo would be amazed. But despite all the enthusiasm, we should not forget the challenges. The corrosive properties of the salts place high demands on the materials used. Furthermore, there are no established safety standards and approval procedures for this new technology. And last but not least, even if the radioactive waste is less problematic than with conventional reactors, it is not completely without it. Nevertheless, the thorium liquid salt reactor could be a key technology for a low-carbon future. It promises safer and more efficient nuclear energy with less waste, and it shows that it is immensely important to continue research into nuclear energy technologies. In my opinion, this is clearly where the future of modern energy technology lies for now. What do you think? Is the thorium liquid salt reactor the holy grail of nuclear energy or just an empty promise? Feel free to write me your opinion in the comments. From China, we now travel deep into the Earth. Scientists have discovered gigantic structures under Europe. Find out what lies beneath your feet in the depths of the Earth in the video below, and be sure to check out the other videos on the channel. There are many exciting topics, and every click supports my work a lot. Otherwise, I'd say see you in the next video. Take care, friends.